What is good? What is up? It's Jordan or Texans Thoughts, and I'm back with another video today. I'm going to be previewing the Texans-Bills Week 4 matchup, and I've got a special guest from behind enemy lines, our expert of the day, who's going to be helping us shine some light on the Bills. It's none other than Rob Quinn. Rob, he's been part of the team over at Cover One, who does a tremendous job, covering the Bills and the NFL in general, really. He's been formerly with Bills Wire and Bleacher Report as well. And in my opinion, following some of his work, I think my favorite part of his analysis is just how he blends, stats and also the film together to really support his argument. So Rob's a great follow. And if you want to learn more about the game just in general, check his stuff out. I'll have his socials linked in the description for sure. But Rob, thank you so much for coming on and taking the time to talk. If there's anything else you want to plug, fire away.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Jordan. Really looking forward to getting into this. Just got back into the podcast game a couple months ago myself, so knocking the dust off a little bit. But yeah, Cover One, it's awesome, and looking forward to talking Bills and Texans.
All right, you know what? Without further ado, let's not keep the people waiting anymore. Let's get right on into it. The Texans versus the Bills. As a Texans fan, I wish I could say I was more confident in this matchup, but the Bills are probably the toughest team that we're going to play all year. Top 2 team in the AFC, top 5 overall. They are a complete team without many holes. So it's going to be tough for sure. And I'm just hoping for a competitive game and to see our guys fight out there. But let's start on the Texans offensive side of the ball versus the Bills defense. This is a elite defense this year, at least by the stats. They're allowing just 14.7 points per game, 4th in the NFL. I'll throw up some more stats on the screen for you guys. But Rob, talk to me about your kind of defensive philosophy led by defensive coordinator Leslie Frazier, who, he interviewed with the Texans. He was almost their head coach, lost it to David Culley. But talk to me about kind of the philosophy and what Texans fans should expect to see out of that Bills defense.
Yeah, so the Bills, they are one of the few teams in the NFL who really have a lot of continuity, not only in just one position group, but throughout the entire defense. They returned every single starter from a year ago outside of Greg Rousseau, the rookie defensive end. And it's a defense that really isn't going to try to get cute or disguise a ton of stuff or send exotic blitzes. They're really going to make you beat them with what they're playing. They run a standard 4-man front, linebackers, Matt Milano and Tremaine Edmunds, and their secondary is one of the best in the NFL. And they've been together now going on 4 to 5 years with Tre'Davious White and Jordan Poyer, Micah Hyde, and now Levi Wallace in there. So they're really a defense that is just going to play a lot of zone coverage and make you nickel and dime them. And they're not giving up big plays and they capitalize on turnovers. So they're fun to watch. And Leslie Frazier really has this team playing strong through 3 games.
That's really interesting to hear because I feel like that is kind of the formula that our defensive coordinator, Lovie Smith, is trying to create. He wants these veteran guys who, simplify the scheme a little bit and just have them execute. And it hasn't worked out so well for us for the Texans, but it's interesting to see that for the Bills. So then my thoughts on that is kind of, how can the Texans counter that? It's going to be a lot on Davis Mills' shoulders. Of course, the rookie quarterback, he had his debut versus the Panthers on Thursday Night Football. And I guess hearing from you, it's a completely different style of defense. The Panthers, very exotic, blitz heavy. They're going to throw a lot at your face. Now looking over to the Bills, it seems like Mills might have an easier, I don't want to say easier chance schematically, but there's definitely going to be less thrown at him to confuse him. And so that should be good for, an inexperienced quarterback who's had, I believe it's 14 college starts at Stanford. And the Texans should be looking to expand the playbook a little bit for him and take those training wheels off. But we talked about schematics a little bit. And we talked about, let's get a little bit more into, you mentioned some of the names of some of the stars on that defense in terms of the strengths. Who, if you had to say, pick 3, your top 3 guys on that Bills defense, who are you really looking forward to perform there?
So it has to be Matt Milano, number 1. Through 3 games, he's playing like an all-pro. And this is a guy who has been one of the best players on their defense since really the year after he was drafted. Right. And he just got the $40 million extension, and that's looking like a bargain already. And through these 3 games, he has been on fire, just filling up the stat sheet. He's leading the league in tackles for loss, And he is really like the fire and energy on that defense. He's physical. He's one of the rangiest, best coverage linebackers in the league, in my opinion. And he does it all. He can fill the run. He's a great pass rusher as well. They send him on blitzes sometimes, and they drop a D end, or when they're overloading, they'll rush him. But he has to be number one. Number two, Tre'Davious White. He's kind of the key to this thing. You can leave him out on an island. The Bills run a lot of zone, but last week they had him trail Terry McLaurin, and he pretty much shut him down. So he's one of the best corners in the league. And I think last week we got to see, like he's up there with those Jalen Ramsey guys that will shadow. And when his number's called, he can do that. And then on the defensive line, so Greg Rousseau and Ed Oliver get a lot of the hype, but I think Jerry Hughes is still that guy. Jerry Hughes is a veteran. He hasn't really had the sack numbers, but he's been at the top of the league in pressures for the last 3 to 4, even 5 years probably. And he's just ferocious. But with the rotation that they have on defensive line right now, it's keeping all those guys fresh, and they have a bevy of pass rushers that can get home. So I would say Matt Milano, Trey White, and Jerry Hughes are probably their top 3 defenders right now.
For sure. I'm very worried about Milano because, like you said, he does it all. One of probably 5-7 best linebackers in the league.
Sure.
And especially for a Texans offense that prides themselves in their identity is, we got to run the ball to make everything work. Milano's a tough guy to get through and to get around because he's fast. He's still physical for, a weak side linebacker. So definitely a little bit worried about that. I think the matchup that I'm going to really be interested in, and like you said, is Trey White potentially shadowing Brandon Cooks. And like you said before, Bills zone heavy defense, but when he needs to step up and take that wide receiver one, he absolutely can. And I think this is a matchup that will force him to do so because Cooks is our offense. He is our passing offense. There's no one else. He makes up for 56% of our passing yards. He's been a crutch for Tyrod Taylor and a crutch for Davis Mills, especially when pressure comes, especially on third downs, where he's first in the NFL in receiving yards in 153. He's had a hell of a season. Offensive coordinator Tim Kelly has really ran things through him, scheming him easy looks as the first and primary read. So how do you expect Trey White to perform versus Cooks? He just shut down Terry McLaurin, like you said. You think he's going to have a similar type of game versus the speedy Cooks?
Right. Brandon Cooks is one of those receivers that I think gets so overlooked when talking about the top receivers in the NFL, just because he hasn't been on these great teams. And if he has, he wasn't really the primary option in their offense. Right. But he's only had, I think, like 2 years under 1,000 yards in his career. And he's somebody absolutely that the Bills are going to be keying in on in this game that they're going to want to take away. Now, Trey White, he doesn't typically shadow the number one receiver. I'm not sure what the reasoning was last week with McLaurin. I know Levi Wallace was battling a knee injury that had him not really not practicing, but I think he only practiced 1 day last week. So I'm not sure if that factored into it. But it will be interesting to see how they attack it because Brandon Cooks really is their weapon on offense. So if Trey White does shadow him, I think it'll be a good matchup because White has speed. He can cover. He can run with anybody. But I think their defense, when they play their style, and if they get Levi Wallace on him, it could be a problem for Buffalo's defense. I mean, Cooks can be a problem for anybody in this league, but I think you'd want to have Trey White on him. So it will be interesting to see how Frazier decides to go about it.
Yeah, and that's the thing is that he's going to get, no matter who's guarding Brandon Cooks, and like you said, primarily it's a lot of time it's going to be zone anyways, but Cooks is going to get the targets no matter who's covering. He's 7 at week 1, 14 in week 2, 11 in week 3. Like this man is going to get force fed the ball. So it'll be interesting to see. And you talked about Levi Wallace. I guess that's something. The next thing to bring up is there's not many holes on this Bills defense, but if there is maybe one that you can nitpick, maybe it's that cornerback 2 spot that people have been talking about for years. They try and solidify, and I've been a huge fan of Levi Wallace since his days at Alabama. I thought he was underrated. I didn't think he deserved to be undrafted. I liked him a lot in a press man system, and so I don't think he's translated as well to a zone system. But talk to me about your thoughts on him. You said that he had a knee injury. Has he taken that step this year, or is he still kind of seen as somewhat of the weak point of that defense?
It's tough to call him like a weak point, but when you
Yeah.
have a defense like that's that talented all around, like I guess he would be the one that you want to single out as like that's the guy we want to go after. But Wallace this season hasn't been really underwhelming by any means. I think that he is who he is and he's steady. He's not going to make big mistakes, but once again, it's his athleticism. I think that's a problem for him because when he gets against these explosive receivers or these guys with size, he's very lanky and he's not going to match up with the size guys. And while he has incredible technique and he's going to be able to play his technique right, some of these guys are going to be able to get by him, and that's where he's had issues. So I think if the Texans can get Cooks isolated on him, that they're going to have to take the shot right there because, like you said, there's not a ton of weak points on this defense. But if we're picking for one, it would have to be Wallace.
For sure, for sure. And then I'm trying to find I've tried so hard to find another spot. And I think maybe something that Texans could be doing better in terms of attacking opposing defenses is attack linebackers. I mean, most linebackers are built to stop the run, right? And so you guys got a great pair right there. But talk to me about Tremaine Edmunds. He's a freak athlete for sure, but in coverage particularly, there's more to it than just relying on your freak athleticism. How has he looked so far? Is he someone that they could look to attack over the middle of the field, or has he been pretty sound in coverage?
So he's been pretty sound this year. I mean, this was something that a lot of Bills fans are just rag on Tremaine Edmunds. Last year, he was injured for most of the season. He dealt with the shoulder, and that really limited him, and he didn't miss any time. Well, I think he missed one game last year, but he played through the shoulder injury for the season, and his production and overall level of play took a hit from that. So Bills fans are really like kind of forgetting about how the injury impacted him and just looking at that and saying that's who he is as a player. Now this year he's looked a lot better, and it's funny because when you contrast Edmunds to Milano just you can feel his energy and his physicality, and that's something that Edmunds really doesn't have. And I think that's what fans want to see more of. But he's rangy, he's athletic, and he's a big guy. He's 6'5", 255. So when he's dropping into a hook zone, a quarterback's going to struggle to throw that over the top if he's trying to push it down the seam, and he's got the range to play the flats and a little bit in man coverage. So I mean, right now this season he hasn't really been a liability, but if you're looking back at last year or his year before, that's where he would typically struggle with tight ends. So
okay, interesting to know. I guess the next part to talk about is kind of the Texans' keys. We're talking about what they're trying to do and to attack that Bills defense. And I think, in my opinion, it all starts with keeping the rookie quarterback Davis Mills clean. Like you said before, the Bills' defensive line, it's deep, it's talented. You got veterans, you got the youth, and they don't blitz too much. So it's gonna come down to kind of winning those one-on-one matchups and also, stopping stunts and whatnot. And that's something that I think the Texans offensive line has been pretty solid with, just winning their one-on-one matchups. They have invested a lot into this offensive line. The 2 firsts and a second-round pick for Tunsil, a first-round pick in Titus Howard, second-round pick in Max Sharping. And then you got some veterans in Justin Britt and Marcus Cannon who, these guys are names. Maybe in 2016, you would have been a lot more confident in their talent, but they still have been around the league and they know what to do. So I think that could be something where we hopefully can keep Davis Mills clean. So I think that's very important in his development, of course. Have you seen any of Davis Mills so far? Do you have any thoughts on the rook?
So I didn't study him really coming out of Stanford, but I watched obviously the Panthers game, and I caught a little bit of the Bengals game. I think it was week 2. I'm sorry,
Browns. Yeah,
Browns. Yeah.
No
but yeah, I mean, he's a rookie, and on a roster like that where he's not going to have a lot of help, you're going to go through those pains. And I mean, we saw with Josh Allen, and look what he is now. I mean, I'm not saying he has those kind of traits, but a rookie quarterback, you're going to have to deal with those growing pains, especially on a roster that's in a team that's really dysfunctional like the Texans right now. But I think he's got good arm strength. I know he's got some good mobility to him and toughness. I know he was standing in the pocket, he was stepping up in the pocket, evading the rush a little bit. But like you said, at the end of the day, the offensive line is going to have to keep him clean. And against Buffalo's defensive line, I think that's where they're going to have to win this game. So.
Absolutely. And I think a big part of that comes down to not only execution, but also the game plan and the scheme. Mm-hmm. And we saw last week versus the number 1 defense in the league that in the Panthers, and they get pressure with ease everywhere, 4-man rush or blitzing, it doesn't matter. And so we saw the offensive game plan kind of look to protect Mills. Of course, it's his first start. They went screen heavy. They tried to rely on the run game. When they did drop the back to pass, it was a lot of dink and dunk, a lot of short, quick game, a lot of rhythm passing, and they didn't ask a lot of him. And so I think it's hard to find that balance because obviously you don't want to just throw your young rookie quarterback to the Wolves. You don't want to do what the Bears are doing to Justin Fields, what the Jets and Jaguars are doing to Wilson and Lawrence. But I think to see that growth out of a rookie, you also have to push them a little bit. You can't keep the training wheels on the entire time. And so I think the Bills are a better matchup to push him a little bit more and allow for that development to show a little bit. So I think that's what I'm really going to be looking for out of this offense. I think in addition, we got to capitalize in the red zone. Just some final thoughts of how we can kind of put some points on the board. We got to capitalize in the red zone. And then I think this might have to be a shootout. We'll get to the defense in a second, but I think if the Texans have any chance at winning this is going to have to be a shootout because I don't feel too confident in their defense stopping Josh Allen and the offense, and that's what we're going to get into next. Texans defense versus the Bills offense. This matchup is going to be a tough one, man, as well. The Bills are putting up 31.3 points per game, good for 4th in the NFL. They are very impressive. And talk to me about the offensive philosophy with led by Brian Daboll.
Yeah, so I think everyone knows Brian Daboll wants to go and spread it out and air it out all over the field. That's what he's done the last 2 years, and especially last year. We saw it really come together and get rolling. The Bills are doing the same this year. They're going to run a lot of spread, a lot of 3-4 receiver sets, really more than anybody in the league, probably outside of the Cardinals. But they are running the ball a little more with a little more emphasis on that this year. Zach Moss is looking good. Devin Singletary is looking good. I know they've accumulated a lot being up so much, but I think that it's something that they really focused on in the offseason is to run the ball more. But obviously you have Josh Allen, you have Stephon Diggs, you have Emmanuel Sanders, Cole Beasley, Gabe Davis. There's no reason to force the run when you don't have to. And that's why I think on second downs and third downs, they're passing more than everybody else because if you're looking for explosive plays, you can get those. And if you're looking for like the quick game as an extension of the run, that's what Beasley's for. So this is an offense that's extremely tough to defend, and the Texans are going to have their hands full. So.
Yeah, like you said, they're a pretty balanced team. They are 7th in the league in total rushing yards. Like you said, a lot of that is because they're up later in games and they can run the ball out. But then they're also 12th in passing yards. And so it's tough to game plan for a team and try and like pick your poison between either side of the ball when they're good at doing both things. And so I think at the end of the day, this team still kind of lives and dies by Josh Allen. And we saw in the first 2 weeks, at least from what I've seen, that, he didn't look like his same self overall, but week 3, we look like the Josh that you guys know and love. So I think you guys are going to get that same type of Josh Allen versus the Texans. What I'm interested to learn about is for Allen, has he historically been a guy who's been better against man, or has he been better against zone?
I think he's better against man, and there's certain concepts with zone that he can run well, but with man, I think with the receivers that they have now, the Miami games over the last 3 years come to mind. They're a team that runs a lot of man coverage, and Josh Allen has thrown, I think, like 17 touchdowns in the last 6 games and over 1,200 yards. So, I mean, that's just one team, obviously, but they have 2 of the best corners in the NFL, and when they play man coverage, Allen's lit them up. But yeah, with man coverage, I think they have the personnel to beat it, and Allen knows that he can take those shots. But also against zone, he's good at finding those spots, and then also you have to account for him as a runner and just all these different dimensions to the game. So I think that you're going to see a mix, obviously, from not as much of a mix from the Texans, who's running that Tampa too, but I think it's going to be tough for Houston to defend it.
It is for sure. I think Lovie Smith, he started the season first 2 games, and it was like 75% to 80% in Tampa 2. And that's just not going to cut it. I mean, these are not the 05 Bears. You don't got Urlacher and Briggs and Tillman. Like, I mean, you got Christian Kirksey and Zach Cunningham out there. You can't be having them sit in hook zones all day. But then we saw versus the Panthers, they switched up a bit more. They played man on about, I think it was nearly 30% of their reps, and they switched up the cover 2 and cover 3. The distribution was a bit better. So we're seeing Lovey try a few more things, but I think the main issue is that, we did try and vary the coverage, but we still got beat, and Sam Darnold still put up 300 plus passing yards. And so in my opinion, what I've seen is the main issue is a lack of disguising coverages. And I think especially with veteran quarterbacks, and Josh isn't a veteran per se, but his passing ability is that level of a veteran, in my opinion. And so if you give those guys the same look pre-snap that you're going to give them post-snap, it's way too easy for them to just pick you apart, especially when you don't have the talents for it. So I wish I was more confident in that matchup, but you saying that Allen is better than in versus man than zone, maybe we can finally disguise our coverages and give him some headaches. That would be the key that the Texans need to do. But again, I mean, what's the saying? Tiger doesn't change the stripes, something like that. Yeah. Lovie Smith is going to be Lovie Smith. And then I'm going to believe that until he proves me wrong. And I want him to prove me wrong. But
right. And I don't think the coverages are really going to play as much as in getting in Allen's head as the pass rush is, because Allen, as good as he is, and when he gets into a groove, he is just unstoppable almost. Right. But when the pass rush can get to him, he's shown time and time again that he will get rattled, and it will get to him, and he will make some boneheaded decisions with the ball. And you guys saw that in the wild card game a couple years ago when the Texans beat them, and we saw that in week 1 against the Steelers. And that's why they lost the game, is because the pass rush, Cam Hayward and TJ Watt and Melvin Ingram were getting pressure. And they got it a few times in the first quarter. And then when they weren't bringing pressure, he was feeling it, that it wasn't there. He was rushing passes and forcing stuff and fumbling. And that's how I think you beat Josh Allen, is with pressure.
That's exactly what I was going to say. How can the Texans try their best to slow them down? And I think looking at the offensive line, I think you guys pretty solid on the left side with Dawkins and Feliciano. And I think maybe if there's some guys to single out like Cody Ford, how has Mitch Morse and who's the other guy, Darrell Williams, how they kind of performed? Are those kind of some guys that the Texans could look to take advantage of?
So definitely interior pressure is where they're going to be able to probably win easiest. Darrell Williams he was rock solid last season. Week 1, he kind of struggled, but since then he's looked solid. Deion Dawkins is a beast. But John Feliciano and Cody Ford are liabilities, complete liabilities. Ford, I didn't think he deserved the starting job going into the season, but the front office loves him. He really struggled this past week. Obviously, anyone would against a guy like Darren Payne.
Yeah.
But throughout the preseason, in the first 3 games of the season, he's really struggled. Feliciano, he's another guy. I think he's a replacement level guard. Just not overly powerful, not athletic, but the team likes him. He's one of those like glue guys that Josh Allen loves, and the locker room guys love him. He's physical, but I think he's average. And I think that as far as defensively for the Texans, if you want to pick a matchup to focus on, it would be on either of those guards.
All right, that's great to hear, because I think our interior pass rush has been much improved from recent years. We signed Malik Collins, formerly of the Raiders and the Cowboys, and we seem to be getting him a bit back to his Cowboys shape than his historically and statistically bad Raiders shape. I mean, that defense just be ruining players left and right, but now they finally got it figured out for some reason. But I like Malik Collins. He's a great athlete. You're going to see him try his patented spin move. And he's a terror there, rushing from the 3-tech. And then we also got a young sophomore defensive tackle, Ross Blacklock, out of TCU. He's kind of taking that sophomore step, playing a lot faster. He's another athlete. So I think, like you said, if the Texans are going to win any sort of matchup on the defensive side of the ball, it's got to be the interior of the trenches. And if we can pressure Josh Allen, get into his head a little bit there, force some mistakes, force some turnovers, set the offense up for short field position, that's really the way that we can keep this game competitive and potentially steal a dub. Maybe I'm not betting on anything, but that's the formula. That is the formula for sure. All right. I think we talked about both sides of the ball. You want to give us a quick game? I'm not a big game prediction guy. I mean, like, the NFL is so impossible to predict, but if you had to try your best, give us a quick score prediction, Rob.
I'm going to say probably like 35 to 14 or 17 Bills win. I just don't see a way. Like on paper, if you look at just the depth charts, I don't see any spot where Houston's better than Buffalo. I really don't. And I just think talent wise from top to bottom, the Bills just are going to run them out.
Yeah. I hate to do this, and I hate to agree with you, and I hate to predict a loss.
Yeah.
As a fan, I mean, it hurts you, but being realistic about the expectations of the Texans this season, I mean, no one's really expecting this team to be a playoff team. They don't got the talent for it. It's a new rookie head coach, new defensive coordinator. There's so much turnover, so it's hard to put this team together. And we saw them be a bit more competitive in the first few weeks, but that was with Tyrod Taylor. And he was playing out his mind. Love the dude.
Love that.
Love the dude. I mean, you guys know how great he can be. And so I'm hurt that his injury has occurred yet again, but hopefully he can come back stronger than ever. But yeah, that's what kind of gives me a little less confidence in this matchup as well. Davis Mills, haven't seen enough to really make me think that he can be the guy, and especially against a disciplined veteran defense with the continuity, with a veteran defensive coordinator. Like, they know how to execute their game plan very well. And so it's going to be a tough matchup for sure. I think I would go with a similar score prediction for you as well. I think probably mid 30s, high 30s, even I can see them getting to 40 on the day if Josh Allen is really feeling it. And then I think we're going to be behind for most of the game, so we'll be passing the ball a good amount. So I think we have the potential, if Davis Mills can prove all of his doubters wrong and show that he has a higher ceiling than most think. 17 points, that's probably where I'd cap it. I mean, I just tried to talk it up a lot, but I think 17 is probably the highest. I think on the realistic end, you're probably getting 10, 14, to be honest. But I mean, I hope that
I've been there, man. Bills fan here, so I feel you.
It's the start of the rebuild, man. Things ain't gonna look pretty, but hey, we're looking to the future, and and that's the thing I want to end this on, is that I just hope this game can be competitive. So many games in the previous regime under Bill O'Brien, we've seen this team quit, and as a fan, that's hard to see. And I'm sure as teammates, you never want to see your brothers out there quit on you as well. So, what this team has shown is that they can be more competitive. The culture is improving, and so I just hope to see that again versus the Bills. But yeah, that's going to do it from me. Rob, do you have any final thoughts, any closing thoughts? You guys can follow him on Twitter. There's his handle, Rob Quinn 619. But yeah, that's it. Any last thoughts, Rob?
No, I just want to say thanks for having me on, man, and look forward to the game.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you so much for taking the time, Rob. We'll have to
of course.
reconnect later, maybe talk about, I don't know. Are you a big draft guy?
Yeah, definitely.
Yes. All right. Definitely. Okay. We'll have to reconnect later in the season for that. But yeah, awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time, man. Take care. Hope you guys enjoyed. Hit the like button, subscribe, comments, your thoughts on the game, and we'll catch you later for the post-game stream. Take care, y'all.